All right, YouTube, if you need any more evidence that Hillary Clinton is a weak and often fumbling candidate, probably the weakest Democratic candidate since the Walter Mondale days. I keep returning to Mondale, but there are quite a few similarities. You've got the lukewarm, slight leftism, you've got the corporatism, and you've definitely got, as well, the failure of Hillary really to capitalize upon younger voters who have flocked to Bernie Sanders, Trump, and Gary Johnson and have basically abandoned her wholesale. Now the older generation appears to be abandoning her. She got crushed by Bernie Sanders in West Virginia. It's telling because you would normally assume, I think, that West Virginia voters are not particularly endeared to the concept of socialism. That includes the Democrats in the state. I wouldn't expect them to be necessarily on board with such a thing either. And yet here's this 70-something socialist utterly crushing Hillary Clinton into the dirt in this state. I think the polls had her down by like 2 or 3 points on average, and he wins by a significantly larger margin, and not without good reason. It's because Hillary Clinton is tactless. She's catty, and she says things that are fucking stupid. It's like attacking coal miners. Oh, we're going to put so many coal mines out of business. How on earth did anybody think that it was a good idea for her to say this? Yeah, that might buff up her numbers in states she was already going to win. You know, some state where there are no coal mines and people are like, oh, well, we need more organic carrot gardens or something. What about those living in West Virginia? And how is this going to help her in the general election, which she will presumably be in a place like Ohio, in a place like Pennsylvania, in a place like Virginia, some of these other surrounding areas? I don't see it boding well for her. This is a region of the country where the Democrats really have to compete fairly well in order to have really a chance in the general election at all, and she's basically already pissed away her chance to compete there. By the way, I do not choose to believe the following two things that people are talking about. Number one, I do not believe Bernie Sanders would even accept a VP slot. Number two, I don't think it would be offered to him by Clinton from the get-go, because I don't think, number three, that it would actually help her campaign. I don't think that her jerry-rigging a aging socialist in as VP would actually help her. In fact, I think it might arguably hurt her, because people who are apprehensive about socialism, who have been voting mostly for Hillary for this time, will become even more apprehensive once they see that she's pandering. And those that don't like the pandering will be apprehensive anyway because she's a Clinton. So what you would have is sort of a double effect. Any gains would be offset by losses. The losses would probably outstrip the gains. I don't think it would be a great idea. Elizabeth Warren arguably would be a better VP pick, and it's obvious that she's not too into the Hillary Clintondom either. My suggestion for those who support Sanders, who are numerous, almost as numerous as those who are settling for Hillary on the Democratic side, you should punish the DNC. If you really believe in liberalism as it is envisioned by somebody like Sanders or Warren, you should be actively attempting to punish the DNC for riding roughshod over the voters and trying to force Clinton down everybody's throats with superdelegates. Because maybe if she ends up getting crushed, yes, you have a Republican president for some time. However, during that period of time, the Democrats will have to do some soul-searching, Mondale style. When he got crushed as well, they had to do the same. They'll have to do some soul-searching. They'll have to reform the party because it will become evident that they have no other choice. This is the only way to remove the outdated neocons of the 90s, like Bill and Hillary and all of their allies, from the Democratic Party and put them in their place. My suggestion, therefore, would be that when Bernie Sanders almost inevitably loses, whether she jerry-rigs him in as VP to stymie your leaving the party or not, vote for somebody who's arguably closer to your views on many social issues, which is Gary Johnson. Voting for Trump, many of you would never do, but voting for Gary Johnson, I think a lot of you would find if you studied his platform, you'd have more in common with him than not, except on issues like taxation and guns. But let's face it, right now, a lot of the younger voters within the left are primarily concerned not about fiscal issues, not about guns and gun rights or gun restrictions. They're concerned predominantly, this is where Hillary falls short, because these are the things she's focused on. We need more taxes on corporations, and by the way, take guns away from people. They're focused on maintaining gay rights, protecting women's rights. The transgendered issue is rearing its ugly head, even though it shouldn't be. It should be a cut and dry constitutional issue. I say that as a libertarian. The Libertarian Party welcomes people who are from both parties at this point. There are a lot of Republicans. It's a minority, but there are a lot of Republicans who will never back Trump. And I said that some time ago. Most of them will fall in line. For a few million others, there's the Libertarian Party, because the Libertarians fundamentally agree with the Republican view and in fact go further than it on taxes, on guns, on some of these other issues. Gary Johnson, by the way, is not some Ayn Rand worshipping absolute purist libertarian who wants nothing shy of anarcho-capitalism. He's a pragmatic libertarian like myself, and is not focused on, well, government should literally be just the politicians and screw everything else. Who needs a military sort of stuff that you hear from some individuals. On the other side, many Democrats will not support Hillary Clinton. There were polls, legitimate mainstream polls conducted, showing that more than half of Sanders supporters would not back Hillary. Only about 45% would. The rest all either go to Gary Johnson, Donald Trump, or they just sit at home or vote for somebody else. Now, my assumption is that some of those that say they would abandon ship are just bluffing. They will ultimately fall in line with Hillary Clinton. But even if it's only a few million voters from either party that jump ship to a third party, that third party suddenly gains enough support to be viable. It gives people a real option, something that is different from the neoconservative Republicans, the neoconservative Democrats. And in the meantime, with a third party paradigm shift occurring, both parties will be under the onus to reform the way that they do business. For the GOP, that probably means, this is my prediction, they will have to force members out of their party that are stuck on wedge issues. They will have to let go of gay marriage as an issue. They'll have to let go of abortion, potentially, as an issue. They'll have to temper their message on foreign wars and on foreign aid. For the Democrats, that means they're going to have to give up the tired argument of we need less guns in the country. They're going to have to give it up. It's a terribly unpopular message. It's not helping them in the general election. It may bode well among partisans. It may help a Democrat win handily in California or New York, but is it helping them in a swing state? Is it helping them in Ohio? Is it helping them necessarily in a place like Virginia? The answer is clearly no. It's vastly unpopular in many of these regions. Hillary has made it an election issue. It's her mistake to do so. And so the advice I would give to disenfranchised voters from both parties is, yes, you should vote for the Libertarian Party. I say that, and I'm biased here. I am a libertarian myself, but take a look at the actual issues. The Democrats, the left, not like the corporate Democratic media machine. They just ignore libertarianism altogether. You know, the CNNs or whatever of the world. The Solons and Jezebels, they strawman libertarianism and try to convince you that it's basically just a bunch of Bible thumpers. Nothing could possibly be further from the truth. There aren't a lot of moralist libertarians. Where they are, they subjugate that to the Constitution and say, I don't really, if I'm religious, I really don't care about abusing people anyway. They're more likely to argue for the abolition of state marriage than discriminating against, for instance, a gay couple or something. For the Republicans, the far-right media, the Breitbarts and Blazes of the world, attack libertarianism and say that it's basically just a bunch of pot-smoking hippies who happen to agree with you on guns. Also not true whatsoever. On fiscal issues, they make Glenn Beck look like a Democrat. So, be that as it is, yes, this party, for those who want fundamental reform, it can be a slow process. It makes more sense for the Democrats worrying about Trump being elected if you don't stand behind Hillary. Who cares? Hillary Clinton's not a sound candidate anyway. Even most Democrats seem to understand this. Standing behind her and settling for a candidate that will make your party look weak, who will be corrupt and pandering, who will probably be a one-term disaster. Thus, the first female president we have is a legacy of darkness and trouble and fiscal regressiveness. That doesn't sound like a long-term game plan. That sounds like a short-term, we're settling for winning this play and ultimately losing the war. It would not be good advice to the Democratic Party to say, yes, you should settle for Hillary. No, if Hillary is your nominee, which is likely, you should let the DNC fail in this election. You should let it get washed away so that it has to reform and reconstitute its message in such a way that it updates itself, because Hillary is essentially stuck in the 1990s. If the Democrats keep with that message, they will never win another election again. They have to change their message. While Hillary's dragging her feet, and so is Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Sanders is trying to change it. Unfortunately, he has chosen the wrong array of issues and the wrong positions on some of these issues to actually do so. On the other side, the establishment has been utterly overthrown by Donald Trump. He is the nominee of the Republican Party. There are Republicans who don't like this, if only for a protest vote. I would think that if a person is a never-Trumper, and they realize Trump has outwitted their own party's leadership, why would you then put your support back into the GOP in any way, shape, or form? Why would you back their candidate? Why would you back any Republicans running for the House and Senate? No, you should tell them to screw off if you believe that you've been duped. Now, I said early on Rand Paul was the best Republican candidate, and Donald Trump was at least tolerable, if not somebody that I would vote for. But I can understand why a lot of people who consider themselves conservatives, some of them are, Glenn Beck's not a conservative, Ben Shapiro's not a conservative, but for many of the lay people, the actual voters, quite clearly, there are people who feel that Donald Trump doesn't quite represent what they want to see in the United States. Well, take a look at the Libertarian Party's platform and see if that's something you'll tolerate. The idea of a Ted Cruz, John Kasich third party move, that's ridiculous. Number one, they'll never do it. Number two, there's already a third party there that probably better represents your views. Increasingly younger Republicans, for example, they don't care about gay marriage as an issue. They don't see it as a problem. They don't really care about abortion. They don't really care. They don't want to send a bunch of money and blood abroad to be shed on foreign soil. Therefore, they sound a lot like libertarians, honestly. I know Trump has been, after Rand Paul left, most of the self-professed libertarians within the GOP amalgamated behind Donald Trump and, to a lesser degree, Ted Cruz. I don't know how you can be a libertarian and support somebody like Cruz, but that's who they voted for. They were self-professed libertarians. However, there's an actual libertarian party. It's not libertarianism is not simply an ideology. There's an actual party representing that ideology, more or less. They've got their own primarying system. Gary Johnson is crushing everybody. I have to say I was wrong about John McAfee. His platform is more sensible than I originally estimated. However, again, and Austin Peterson, okay, I guess. However, I still support Gary Johnson. He will be the Libertarian nominee, it seems. Therefore, I will be voting for Gary Johnson, and I would invite many others to do the same. There are also potentially Libertarian candidates that will be on your ballot for the Senate and for the House. Even having one or two people in Congress who are libertarians, regardless of how the presidential election goes, will completely shock the two-party system. It will utterly overthrow the establishment of both parties, and they will be in mass panic. So if you want to punish the Democratic establishment for jerry-rigging in Hillary, if you want to punish the RNC for either trying to drag Trump down and now trying to negotiate with him, or for allowing Trump the nomination, or for some other perceived ill for not stopping Obama handily enough, then you should abandon your party, at least temporarily. What you should be doing is trying to make them feel the pressure, trying to punish them, trying to make them literally lose. It's the only way that they're going to learn some common sense. It's the only way you can knock some sense into them. The only way you can punish a political party is by not supporting them. Withdraw your continuing donation. Don't vote for their candidates. Vote for their enemies or vote for some other party. A lot of Democrats and Republicans are still stuck in the two-party mentality, whereby they think the other side is evil and hegemonic. Well, that's not true. But if you actually believe that, then there are third parties that you probably have never actually studied the platform of. A lot of people think they know what libertarianism is, but what they've been told about it is secondhand by people who are biased in their analysis of the actual platform. If Salon analyzes libertarianism, they will never tell you, yes, the Libertarian Party didn't give a shit about gay marriage back in the 70s. The Libertarian Party tacitly stood up for the right of a woman to choose back in the 70s. They're never going to tell you that. They'll never tell you that the first gay presidential candidate was a libertarian at the same time, that the first black presidential candidate was a libertarian as well. The Republican media, that is the partisans or the Blaze or something like that, the neocon media, is never going to tell you that the Libertarian Party is any other than dope-smoking hippies, when in reality they believe more strongly in the Second Amendment than any Republican that's ever existed. They believe in a lower tax rate than any Republican currently in office, and really are a lot more like maybe the Republican Party 100 years ago. So there you have it. Hillary Clinton is the weakest front-runner in the modern history of the Democratic Party. Trump is amalgamating his support, but he's having difficulty. He's having difficulty unifying the Republicans, specifically because there's so many holdouts that think he's going to get wiped off the face of the earth by Hillary. I disagree. I think he'll win. In fact, I think it'll probably be a landslide. But then again, I'm not a Trump fan. I'm not going to be voting for Donald Trump. I'll be voting for Gary Johnson. The Trump train is rolling on by. I see it. I observe that it's well ahead of the Hillary wagon, or whatever you would call it. But at the same time, I'm not going to get on board with it because I think the amount of reform he's offering, while laudable, is too little too late. So yes, my advice to all of these disenfranchised Bernie Sanders fans: vote for the Libertarian Party, punish the DNC for instituting the superdelegate rule, for deciding that the actual Democratic voters don't really matter. All that matters is them getting corporate donations. Yes, you should punish the party for what it's done. That's about all. Peace out.